Welcome to the Glow Code podcast. My name is Kate Dove and I'm your host. The Glow Code podcast is a collection of bite-sized conversations designed to help you step into your main character energy, glow up, and connect with your femininity. This podcast is for the woman who wants to radiate her beauty from the inside out and move through the world with authenticity. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, and let's get started. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Glow Code podcast. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's episode, I have an announcement that I wanted to share. I told myself I wasn't going to do this. I told myself that I was just going to rest and recenter during the holiday season, but an idea came through and here I am promoting and marketing another book. So on December 2nd, my first MFF romance called Me, Mr. and Mrs. Claus is coming out. And I was just laying in bed at like 11:30 at night thinking to myself, what am I going to do during this holiday season? How do I want to rest? How do I want to recharge? But if I did have an idea for a Christmas novel, what would that look like? And just like all of my other ideas, this just came through so strongly. And with any idea that I have, it comes through like a movie. So I'm seeing what's happening from the character's perspective, and then my imagination will shift to third person point of view, and I'll get a feel for the environment and the world and all of that. So I want to leave you with some little details about the plot, and then we will get into the episode. Me, Mr. and Mrs. Claus follows Candy. She is a 26-year-old dancer in the North Pole, and she has always had a thing for Santa and Mrs. Claus. Ever since she moved to the North Pole, they always had a connection, and I won't spill the details on how she ended up moving to the North Pole, but she has this very strong connection with them. She has romantic feelings for them. And every single year, Santa and Mrs. Claus are given an assignment from Cupid to raise the Christmas spirit, because this is what fuels Santa's sleigh and the energy of Christmas and gratitude and joy around the world. And who knows that better than Cupid, the god of love? So Cupid gives Santa and Mrs. Claus an assignment every single year. This year, the assignment is to bring a unicorn into their relationship. And I'm going to leave it at that, because you can go to the Amazon page and look at the full description and pre-order, so that way on December 2nd, it is delivered right to you. All right, with that being said, let's get into today's episode. What is your life purpose exactly, and how do you find it? Firstly, your life purpose is every single waking moment of your life. Many of us think that if we are in a current situation that we are not enjoying, that we are somehow off of our purpose. But everything that we encounter in our life is a piece of the puzzle. We attach the word purpose to a career when our purpose is rooted in our identity. And our identity is so multifaceted. There are so many levels, and there's so much depth to who we are as people. So if you're listening to this and you're feeling lost or stuck, you are exactly where you are meant to be, because there's something in this situation that is helping you grow and that is teaching you. So right now, even though you may not be feeling fulfilled or passionate or creative, you are still living your soul purpose, because this is such a key part of your journey. When we talk about getting in tune with our purpose, and let's do this from the vocational sense, because that's usually where people come into this topic of conversation. There's something that they want to do vocationally, a career that they want to build, and they're wondering, what is my purpose? So when we ask ourselves this question, we need to start from the very beginning. We need to start from recognizing what we loved as children. And we're not going to think about the monetary part right away. We're just going to reflect on what lit us up, because what we did as children were such authentic expressions of our personality. For example, when I was little, I had this huge passion for reading and writing. That was my thing. I was at a high reading level when I was like 3 and 4 years old. I was kind of, I guess, I don't want to say like ahead of everyone else. I just know that I was at a really high level for my age, and that continued as I got older. So when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, I remember taking computer paper and writing stories and then stapling them and then showing them to my family and being like, look, I wrote a book. And here we are now. So along with that, I also had a love of playing with my imagination. I had a fascination for mythical creatures and just mythology in general. And if you guys know, I write romantasy primarily, so there was another hint. And then I also loved dance, and I loved just thinking in general. I was never the why kid, I was the how kid. Instead of asking why this, why that, I would say, how do I do this? How does that work? But how? And I just wanted to know how the world worked. So as I got older, all of those traits of my personality turned into becoming very intuitive. I want to say I was always very sensitive to energy, and I had a lot of imaginary friends growing up too. And once I got to be 12 years old, that is when my intuition started kicking in. So even if you have memories from your early childhood where you were very creative or had a lot of imaginary friends like I did, and then maybe you noticed that as you got older, you were very sensitive and empathetic, that is such a core part of your identity and something that you can reflect on to understand your purpose and how you show up in the world. So at about 12 years old, my intuition started to fully come online, and it's a little bit ironic to say because when we are in our early childhood, that is when we are the most open and receptive to other realms and energies, but we don't remember a lot from those years. But these years of being 11, 12, 13, I remember very vividly. So I also stumbled across manifestation at the time and began learning about psychic abilities and intuition, but on a very surface level. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even understand really the concepts that I was implementing. I did enough for me to manifest some cool little situations. Like, I have this one memory where I knew we were going to be partnered with people for a project the next day in school, and I wanted to have first pick so that way I could pick my crush, and I visualized it and that all happened. So I was able to do just cute little things like that, but I didn't quite know exactly what I was doing. However, having that introduced to me so early allowed me to have extra tools in my tool belt when I encountered things later on, like healing vaginismus, like growing my relationship, like understanding what next steps I needed to take for my soul fulfillment. So that happened between the ages of 11, 12, 13, of being introduced to intuition, spirituality, manifestation. Then once I got to be about 16 years old, I had this really strong desire to want to be either a dance teacher in a school or to go be a professional dancer in New York or LA. I always loved dance before this, and then this love kind of like came back. And that was my goal from about 16 to maybe 18, almost 19. And what's interesting is that people will often tell you to pursue what you love, but not everything that we love is meant to be our careers. So I really loved dance, and I was a very strong performer too. I always loved performing. So I had this goal in mind to want to pursue dance, but there was always this underlying feeling of dread. And I would ask myself, what is missing? What am I doing wrong? Then around the time of COVID is when I was introduced virtually, not in real life, on Instagram to an intuitive reader. And I found this intuitive reader because someone who I followed online who was in the local dance community had shared one of her posts. And that's where I started really going deep into intuition. So between the ages of 18, almost 19, to last year, right when I turned 23, I was just so deep in learning about intuition and manifestation and personal development. And again, I had that feeling of what is missing? What am I doing wrong? I love this thing so much, but nothing is clicking. It was also around this time last year when I got back into my love of reading. The reason I got back into my love of reading was because I went to Barnes & Noble to pick up a book because I was watching the TV show. It was Bridgerton. So I was like, you know what? I want to read the book, so let me go to Barnes & Noble. And this was, so think not 2 years ago from today. Think last year and then 2 years before that. So 3 years ago. That would have been a lot more simpler for me to say from the start. But I went to Barnes & Noble, I pick up this book, and then I see another book that is Greek mythology inspired, but it's a spicy romance. And I just have this feeling where I'm like, I should get this book. And it wasn't until 2 years later that I actually read that book. It was Neon Gods by Katie Robert. I will mention that book until the day I die because it got me back into my love of reading, and it also made me connect with my body on such a deep level that I had kind of that I felt disconnected from before. Also, if you hear that in the background, that is just my ice maker that's probably going to go off and make a really loud noise in a bit, so don't mind that. But if I hadn't connected with my intuition, if I hadn't learned how to hear my intuition, I wouldn't have picked up that book. So everything plays a role in getting you to your destination. And the crazy thing about having goals is that once we get to that goal, there is a dream beyond the dream. So whenever I have a goal in mind, I'm embracing that I'm in a season. I'm embracing that I'm in a cycle because I know I'll get to that goal and I'll really sit with it and I'll hold it, and then something else will call to me. So when you are thinking about connecting with your life purpose, also recognize that there's always going to be a dream beyond the dream. All of that is what led to me finally writing my first romantasy novel in October 2024, and it was this time last year when I was in the middle of writing it and discovering this part of myself that I hadn't given attention to for a really long time, because growing up I was able to nurture that part of my creativity. That's just my ice maker. Okay, I think it's good. I think we're good now. So growing up, I was able to nurture that part of me that loved to write because we would be able to write fiction pieces, and that's what I was extremely passionate about. And then as I got older, I kind of just ignored that, I guess, because I didn't have the invitation. So getting back into reading was my invitation more recently to get into writing. And if you're an author listening to this, you know that like social media is such a big part of marketing your book. So let me walk you through how all this connects. I had the love of reading and writing that I am now doing here as an adult at 24 years old. And I'm finally having that feeling of, I don't want to say completion, but I don't have a feeling of dread. I don't feel like anything is missing. And then the performer in me finds a lot of joy and fun and fulfillment in making the TikToks and the Instagram reels, and I don't feel burnt out by that at all. And then the part of me that is connected with my intuition can guide me in the content creation process, in the writing process, in being open to new ideas. So you can see how all these little pieces of my life have connected and led up to this moment. And that's why I want you to start feeling into your purpose, is to look at what you loved in your early childhood and then how that developed when you were in your teen years, and then now as an adult, where those things have a role in your life, if they have a role in your life at all, and start coming back to them. If you had a very vivid imagination as a child, have you maybe neglected that now as an adult? It's about bringing back these pieces of our authentic self so that way we can then take the aligned, inspired actions that get us to the goals and the life that we want to live. Part of the reason why I was so inspired to talk about this topic today is because for the past couple of weeks I have had this thought and this feeling of I don't just want to be an author. I have spent the past year solidifying into this identity of being an author and writing books, and I have quite a few projects lined up for more books and more creations. But there's that part of me that is now like, I want something more, not because something is missing, but because I have now made myself open and receptive to hearing what else there is for me. So whenever you are trying to remember, I'm going to use that word remember, your life purpose, ask yourself if you are open to the possibilities, if you are open to not putting yourself into a comfortable box. When we have something that we identify with so strongly, it can feel difficult at times to shake that off. For me, something relating to that right now is I've always identified with like having disassociation when I'm out in public by myself and maybe having like a little bit of social anxiety mixed in there. And now I am moving away from that language and that identity. And that feels very strange. It feels weird to let go of something that I'm so used to. You can listen to the previous podcast episode about romanticizing grief because that definitely plays into this whole process. You have to be willing to let go of an old identity. If everyone knows you as a corporate girly who is always on time and doesn't take breaks, but that is causing you to burn out, you have to be okay with separating from that identity. You have to be okay with making other people uncomfortable in your growth, because this isn't about them, it's about you. And when you take care of you, you are then able to take care of other people. We're often told treat other people how you want to be treated. And yes, that is true, but you also want to treat yourself the way that you want other people to treat you, because you set that standard. So when you start making moves that feel aligned, that make you feel fulfilled and passionate, by nurturing yourself and committing to yourself, at first it may look like the world around you is crumbling, because it is, but also because there is something on the other side and you are making space for that thing. When you learn about who you are authentically, when you learn about your personality traits that aren't connected to trauma or other people's expectations, that is what makes you open and receptive to taking the actions to share your gifts and talents with the world. When we are dysregulated, when we are disconnected from who we are authentically, when we are identifying with themes that are holding us back, we are not able to fully shine in the way that we are meant to. And that leading into your purpose that you want to build vocationally, you are then able to attract and magnetize the right collaborations and the right opportunities. If you are not career focused right now and you are still resonating with this also applies because maybe you're not going into an office or writing a book or whatever it is and shining in that way. Maybe in your circle of friends, you are someone who gets to be nurturing and gets to help those around her. Maybe you find that you have extra spare time and you want to go volunteer and you want to be able to hold space for people. Maybe you show up happier and more regulated for your family. Those are all things that make up your purpose, because your purpose is just the authentic you. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode. As always, be sure to leave a 5-star review and share this with your friends and family who you think would resonate with this podcast. All right, everyone, I will see you in the next episode.